3 weeks after the meeting at Nexus Prime, the galaxy erupted into war. The alien coalition struck 12 human worlds at exactly the same time. Their plan was simple: hit hard and fast, make the humans surrender before they could organize a proper defense. On New Sol Colony, Colonel Jiang Minho crouched behind the ruins of what used to be the main government building. Explosions lit up the sky as Valkyrian dropships landed throughout the city. His communicator crackled with reports from his scattered forces. "Sir, they've got us surrounded on 3 sides. Roger that. Fall back to position 7 and wait for my signal." Jiang had been expecting this attack for years, not because he was a prophet, but because humans always expected the worst. The colony looked like a peaceful farming world, but it had been built with war in mind. War Chief Graktal stood in his command ship, watching the battle through his tactical display. The humans were fighting hard, but they were clearly losing. His forces outnumbered them 20 to 1, and they had better weapons and armor. "How long until they surrender?" he asked his aide. "Our intelligence suggests they will break within 6 hours, sir. Humans are not known for their ability to accept heavy casualties." Graktal nodded. That matched everything he knew about human psychology. They were soft, emotional creatures who valued individual lives over military objectives. A few more hours of bombardment should convince them to give up. He was completely wrong. Dr. Shin Hee-jin huddled in her laboratory on the research world of Haven as alien soldiers searched the building above her. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. But right now she was more interested in the alien weapons she had managed to steal from a crashed enemy fighter. The technology was impressive, but it was also familiar. Too familiar. She had seen designs like this in classified human military reports from decades ago. Either the aliens had copied human technology, or someone had been sharing information. She connected her portable computer to the alien weapons control system and began downloading its memory banks. What she found made her blood run cold. The weapon contained detailed files about human military tactics, human psychology, and human weaknesses. Files that were incredibly accurate and up to date. Someone had been studying humanity for a very long time. On New Sol Colony, Colonel Jiang received a message on his private channel. "Ghost protocol is active. Begin performance in 30 minutes. Jiang smiled for the first time in 3 weeks. "All units, this is command. Switch to performance mode. Remember, we're supposed to be losing." The change was immediate but subtle. Human forces began retreating in patterns that looked panicked, but were actually carefully planned. Casualties that had been light suddenly seemed much heavier. Weapons that had been working perfectly began to malfunction at just the right moments. To War Chief Graktal, it looked like the human defense was finally cracking. His tactical computer showed enemy resistance dropping rapidly. Human communication networks were failing, their supply lines were cut, and their morale was breaking. "Excellent," he growled. "Prepare the surrender demand. I want to end this cleanly." What he didn't know was that every piece of information his computers were showing him was fake. The humans had been feeding false data into his sensors from the moment his ships entered the system. The real human forces were somewhere else entirely, watching and learning. Admiral Choi Seung-woo stood in a command center that officially did not exist, on a space station that was not on any map. Around him, hundreds of officers monitored the battles across all 12 targeted worlds. Every one of those officers was legally dead, killed in training accidents or ship malfunctions years ago. "Report," he ordered. "All colonies are performing within expected parameters, sir. Enemy forces are following predicted tactical patterns. We're gathering excellent intelligence on their capabilities and command structure. Any surprises?" "A few, sir. The crystalline forces are more flexible than we expected, and the Hive Collective has some new biotechnology we hadn't seen before. But nothing that changes the overall picture." Admiral Choi nodded. For 200 years, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Not hoping for it, not wanting it, but preparing for it. Because humans understood something that most aliens did not. Peace was not the absence of war. It was the ability to win any war quickly and completely. "Sir," another officer called out, "we're receiving the activation codes from Earth." "All of them?" "Yes, sir. Full authorization for Ghost Fleet deployment." Admiral Choi took a deep breath. "Signal all Phantom ships. It's time to stop pretending." Dr. Shin Hye-jin finally cracked the alien weapons security system and accessed its central database. What she found there made her hands shake. The aliens hadn't just been studying humanity for years. They had been studying them for decades, maybe longer. Every human diplomatic mission, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange had been monitored and analyzed. The aliens had detailed psychological profiles of human leaders, complete maps of human space, and even samples of human DNA from various sources. But the most terrifying discovery was a single file labeled Final Solution Protocol. When she opened it, she found plans for the complete extermination of the human species. Not conquest, not enslavement, total genocide. The current attack wasn't meant to defeat humanity. It was meant to test human responses and gather final intelligence before the real war began. She immediately began transmitting her findings to every human military facility she could reach. But as she worked, she realized something else. The aliens' plan was incredibly detailed, but it was also flawed. They understood human technology and human tactics, but they had completely misunderstood human nature. They thought humans were weak because humans seemed to value peace. They thought humans were soft because humans showed mercy to defeated enemies. They thought humans were predictable because humans followed rules and laws. They had spent 50 years studying humanity, and they had learned nothing important at all. On New Sol Colony, War Chief Graktal prepared to deliver his surrender demand. His forces controlled most of the planet's major cities, and human resistance was clearly broken. The war would be over within hours. He opened a communication channel to the human command center. "Colonel Jang, I presume? This is War Chief Graktal of the Valkyrian Empire. I am prepared to accept your surrender." Colonel Jang appeared on the screen, looking exhausted and defeated. "What are your terms?" "Complete surrender of all human military assets. Your soldiers will be processed as prisoners of war. Your civilians will be relocated to designated areas. Your world will become a Valkyrian protectorate." Jang was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked directly into the camera. "I have one question, War Chief. Did you really think it would be this easy?" Before Graktal could respond, every light in the human city went out. For exactly 3 seconds, the entire planet was dark. When the lights came back on, everything had changed. The massive space station Nexus Prime hung in the void like a glittering jewel. Ships from hundreds of worlds docked at its ports every day. Today was different. Today, the most important meeting in 3,000 years was about to begin. Captain Li Wu-jin stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the station grow larger on the screen. The Harmony's Edge was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and well-armed. More importantly, it carried Ambassador Park Ji-woo, one of humanity's best diplomats, Captain. "We're getting clearance to dock," said Lieutenant Commander Kim Da-eun from her position at the tactical station. She was young but sharp, and Lee trusted her completely. "Good. Park the ship nice and gentle. We don't want to seem aggressive," Lee replied with a small smile. Ambassador Park walked onto the bridge, adjusting his formal robes. He was an older man with kind eyes, but Lee knew those eyes had seen many difficult negotiations. "How long until the meeting starts?" 2 hours, sir. "Enough time for you to get settled and review your notes." Park nodded. "I've been preparing for this for months. The trade agreements should be simple enough. It's the other issues that worry me," Lee understood. Lately, several alien species had been making complaints about humans. Nothing serious, just small problems about trade routes and mining rights. But when small problems happen together, they could become big problems. The Harmony's Edge docked smoothly. Park gathered his team and headed for the station. Lee remained on the bridge watching the sensor displays. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't say what. "Da-eun, run a full scan of the area. Look for anything unusual." "Already on it, Captain. There are a lot more ships here than normal." "Way more," Lee frowned. Trade meetings usually brought maybe 50 ships. His sensors showed over 800. "What kind of ships?" "Mixed. Valkyrian warships, crystalline exploration vessels, hive transport pods. It's like half the galaxy decided to show up." Meanwhile, in the station's great council chamber, Ambassador Park took his seat at the human delegation table. The room was enormous, with representatives from nearly every known species. The air hummed with translation devices working in hundreds of languages. High Commander Thexmore of the Valkyrian Empire stood up first. He was a huge creature, covered in scales and armed with natural weapons that could tear through metal. When he spoke, his voice boomed across the chamber. "Fellow beings of the galaxy, we gather today to address a serious threat to our peaceful way of life." Park raised an eyebrow. This was not how trade meetings usually started. Thexmore continued. For too long, we have trusted the humans to honor their agreements. But evidence has come to light that they have been breaking the most sacred laws of our galaxy. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed what looked like human military installations and weapon factories. Park studied the images carefully. They looked real, but something about them seemed wrong. These images prove that humans have been secretly building weapons of mass destruction. They have violated every arms control treaty signed in the last 500 years. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and angry sounds. Park remained calm, but inside he was calculating quickly. This was clearly a setup, but it was a very good one. Furthermore, Thexmore's voice rose above the noise. We demand immediate inspection of all human military facilities. If they refuse, we must assume they have something to hide. Park stood slowly. The chamber fell quiet. Honored delegates, these accusations are completely false. The images shown are fabricated, and we will not submit to illegal searches of our sovereign territory. The Crystalline Dominion's representative, a being of living crystal called Shardlord Vexkala, spoke in a voice like ringing bells. If the humans have nothing to hide, why do they refuse inspection? Because, Park replied firmly, no nation submits to searches without evidence of actual wrongdoing. These fake images prove nothing except that our accusers are desperate to find excuses for aggression. Back on the Harmony's edge, Daun's fingers flew over her console. Captain, I'm picking up some really strange readings. There are ships moving into formation around the station. What kind of formation? Attack formation, sir. They're trying to hide it, but I can see the pattern. Lee felt his blood run cold. How many ships? At least 300 in the first wave. Probably more hiding behind the gas giant. Lee activated his private communication channel to Earth. Command, this is Harmony's Edge. We have a situation developing at Nexus Prime. Looks like someone is planning something big. The reply came back in seconds, which meant it had been prepared in advance. Understood, Captain. Maintain your position and protect the ambassador. Protocol 7 is now active. Lee had never heard of Protocol 7, but the tone of the message made his skin crawl. Something very serious was about to happen. In the council chamber, the vote was called. One by one, species after species voted to support the Valkyrian demands. The final count was 847 votes for immediate action against humanity, and only 12 votes against. Park listened to the results without showing any emotion. Then he stood up one more time. I want all delegates to remember this day. Remember that you chose to break the oldest and most important rule in this galaxy. Thexmore laughed, a sound like grinding metal. What rule is that, human? Park looked directly at him. Never underestimate the species that learned to kill before it learned to think. The chamber fell silent. Then Thexmore laughed again. Empty threats from a weak species. Your time of influence is over. Park gathered his papers calmly. We'll see. As the human delegation left the chamber, Daun's voice crackled over Lee's communicator. Captain, you need to see this. I just intercepted a coded transmission to all the alien fleets. What did it say? 3 words, sir. Begin the harvest. Lee closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and began giving orders. All crew to battle stations. Seal the ship and prepare for emergency departure. And send a message to Earth with a single word. Broken. As the Harmony's Edge undocked from Nexus Prime, Lee watched hundreds of alien warships begin to move. They thought they were about to crush humanity once and for all. They had no idea what they had just started. The oldest rule in the galaxy existed for a very good reason. In a few hours, they were going to remember why. Admiral Choi Seong-woo stood on the bridge of the Inevitable Dawn, a ship so large it had its own gravitational field. The vessel had been built in secret over 50 years, constructed in hidden shipyards that existed in empty space between star systems. No alien species knew it existed, because officially it didn't. Communications, open a channel to the Galactic Council. Full broadcast, all frequencies. Channel open, sir. Admiral Choi looked directly into the camera, his expression calm and professional. Behind him, the bridge of the Inevitable Dawn bustled with activity as officers who were supposed to be dead coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history. Members of the Galactic Council. This is Admiral Choi Seong-woo of the Human Defense Force. 3 weeks ago, you voted to authorize military action against human colonies. Today I'm here to explain why that was a mistake. On Nexus Prime, the emergency council session had been called as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Captain Li Wu-jin sat in the observers section, no longer pretending to be just a simple ship captain. His uniform now displayed the insignia of human intelligence, and his calm expression had been replaced by something much more dangerous. The council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species were shouting at each other in dozens of languages. The translation system could barely keep up. The entire Valkyrian Third Fleet has disappeared. Our colonies in the Outer Rim are reporting massive human ships appearing from nowhere. How is this possible? Our intelligence said humans were barely space-capable. Admiral Choi's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Your intelligence was wrong because we wanted it to be wrong. For 300 years, humanity has maintained two separate civilizations. The one you know consists of merchants, diplomats, and explorers. The one you don't know consists of the most advanced military force in galactic history. High Commander Thexmore tried to interrupt, but found his communication system had been overridden. Somehow the humans had taken control of every broadcast system in the galaxy. You attacked our colonies under the assumption that we were weak and unprepared. You were correct that we were prepared. You were catastrophically wrong about everything else. As Admiral Choi spoke, holographic displays appeared throughout the council chamber. They showed real-time tactical displays from every battle zone. The alien coalition forces that had seemed to be winning just hours before were now completely surrounded by human ships that had appeared from nowhere. Captain Yoon Sora watched from the bridge of the Silent Thunder as her ship decloaked, along with 49 others. The Valkyrian fleet that had been hunting for phantom attackers suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that had been watching them all along. This is Captain Yoon Sora of the Human Defense Force. Your fleet is now completely surrounded. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. The Valkyrian commander looked at his sensors in disbelief. 50 ships had appeared from empty space, each one larger and more advanced than anything in his fleet. His tactical computer calculated their odds of survival at approximately 0. How long have you been watching us? Since the moment you entered this system. We've been recording everything. Your tactics, your weaknesses, your psychological responses to stress. Very educational. Dr. Shin Hee-jin had finished analyzing the alien intelligence files and was broadcasting her conclusions across all networks. Her findings were being received by both human and alien forces, but the implications were very different for each side. The alien coalition spent 50 years preparing for this war. They studied human colonies, infiltrated human organizations, and developed detailed plans for conquest. But they made one critical error. They studied the wrong humans. She uploaded thousands of documents showing the true scope of the alien surveillance program. Every human diplomatic mission had been monitored. Every trade agreement had been analyzed for military intelligence. Every cultural exchange had been used to gather information about human psychology and capabilities. Every piece of information they collected was carefully provided by human intelligence services. Every weakness they discovered was deliberately shown to them. Every capability they thought they understood was either obsolete or completely fictional. Lieutenant Kang Bo-ra sat at the communication station aboard the Inevitable Dawn, watching surrender requests flood in from across the galaxy. Species after species was realizing the true scope of what they were facing and attempting to withdraw from the coalition. Sir, we have surrender requests from 847 different governments. That's every species that voted for military action against us. Admiral Choi reviewed the list carefully. Many of these species had been humanity's trading partners for centuries. Their leaders had shared meals with human diplomats and signed friendship treaties with human ambassadors. Denied. All of them, sir. They had 300 years to learn who we really were. They chose to believe we were weak because it made them feel stronger. Now they can live with the consequences of that choice. On New Sol Colony, War Chief Graktal found himself in the unusual position of being a prisoner in his own command center. Colonel Zhang had politely explained that the building was now under human control and that resistance would be both futile and unnecessary. I don't understand, Graktal said. Our intelligence was perfect. We knew everything about your capabilities. Colonel Zhang poured himself a cup of coffee from a machine that had been hidden behind a false wall. The entire command center had been redesigned while they weren't looking, revealing technology that was centuries beyond what the Valkyrians possessed. You knew everything about our theatrical capabilities. The real question is, How did you think a species that conquered its own planet before developing space travel would remain helpless for 3 centuries? Your people value peace. You avoid conflict whenever possible. War Chief, there's a difference between avoiding unnecessary conflicts and being unable to fight. Humans learned that difference about 10,000 years ago. We've been teaching it to others ever since. The holographic display showed the positions of all coalition forces throughout the galaxy. Red markers indicated alien fleets. Blue markers showed human forces. 3 weeks ago, there had been no blue markers on the display at all. Now they outnumbered the red markers by a ratio of 10 to 1. Where did all those ships come from? They were always there. We just weren't showing them to you. High Commander Thexmore was receiving reports from his scattered fleets, and each one was worse than the last. The humans hadn't just been hiding their military capabilities. They had been building them in secret for centuries. Shipyards that didn't exist on any map, colonies that were actually fortress worlds, weapons that violated every known law of physics. Sir, the humans are demanding our complete surrender. What are their terms? There are no terms, sir. They want unconditional surrender of all coalition forces, immediate withdrawal from human space, and full reparations for what they're calling 3 centuries of surveillance and espionage. The amount of the reparations was staggering. It exceeded the total economic output of the entire Valkyrian Empire for the next 1,000 years. This is impossible. No species could have hidden this level of military development. Sir, according to our intelligence analysis, they didn't hide it. We simply refused to see it. Every time we observed something that didn't match our assumptions about human weakness, we explained it away or ignored it completely. Captain Li Wujin stood up in the council chamber as Admiral Choi's broadcast continued. The other delegates watched him nervously, suddenly realizing that the quiet ship captain they had ignored for years was actually something much more dangerous. 3 weeks ago, you voted to break the oldest law in galactic civilization. Today you're going to learn why that law existed in the first place. The holographic displays showed human fleets moving into position around every major alien world, not just the coalition members, but every species that had voted for military action. The message was clear. This wasn't just a war. It was a complete restructuring of galactic civilization. The law wasn't don't attack humans because they're peaceful. It was don't attack humans because the last people who tried it aren't around to warn you. Shard Lord Vexkala of the Crystalline Dominion attempted to speak, but found that her communication system had been disabled. Every alien representative was discovering the same thing. Their technology was no longer under their control. Admiral Choi's final words echoed through the council chamber and across every planet in the galaxy. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of various classifications, the age of human pretense is over. Welcome to the age of human honesty. We think you're going to find it much less comfortable. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. For 3,000 years, the oldest rule had protected everyone from humanity's true nature. Now that rule was broken, and everyone was about to learn what humans were really like when they stopped pretending to be nice. Captain Yoon Sora had been dead for 7 years. At least that's what every official record in the galaxy said. The transport ship she was supposed to be on had exploded during a routine training mission, and her body was never found. In reality, she was very much alive and standing on the bridge of the Silent Thunder, a ship that was invisible to every sensor known to galactic science. Her crew of 200 were all officially dead too, killed in various accidents that had been carefully arranged to look completely natural. "Ma'am, we're in position above the Valkyrian fleet," reported her tactical officer. "They have no idea we're here." "Of course they don't," Yoon replied calmly. "Begin recording. I want complete documentation of their capabilities before we proceed." The Silent Thunder was one of 50 ghost ships positioned throughout the galaxy, each one crewed by people who had volunteered to give up their official existence. For years they had watched and waited, preparing for this exact moment. Below them, War Chief Graktal was trying to understand what had just happened on New Sol Colony. One moment he had been accepting the human surrender. The next, his entire invasion force was surrounded by weapons that hadn't been there before. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface," his sensor officer reported. "It looks like defensive installations, lots of them. That's impossible. Our scans showed this was an agricultural world with minimal military assets. Sir, the scans were wrong, or they were lying." Graktal stared at his tactical display as it updated with new information. The peaceful farming colony he thought he was conquering was actually one of the most heavily fortified worlds he had ever seen. Underground bunkers, hidden weapon platforms, and shield generators that could protect the entire planet. On the planet's surface, Colonel Zhang walked out of what looked like a damaged command bunker. Except now the damage was revealed to be camouflage, and the bunker was actually the entrance to a massive underground military complex. War Chief Graktal, allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm Colonel Zhang Minho, commanding officer of the 47th Human Defense Corps. And you're completely surrounded, Engineer. Bajansu emerged from a hidden tunnel and began activating systems that had been built into the colony's foundations decades ago. Every building, every road, every farm had been designed with defensive capabilities in mind. What the aliens had mistaken for a simple agricultural world was actually a fortress that could hold off an army. Junsu, bring the main batteries online, Zhang ordered. Yes, sir. Weapons hot in 30 seconds. Massive gun turrets rose from the ground throughout the colony. Missile launchers unfolded from hidden compartments in seemingly innocent buildings. The entire planet revealed itself to be one enormous military installation, disguised as a peaceful farming community. High Commander Thexmore was in his flagship, coordinating the attacks on all 12 human worlds, when his communications officer brought him disturbing news. Sir, we're losing contact with several of our fleets. What do you mean, losing contact? They're just gone, sir. No distress signals, no battle reports, no debris. One moment they're there, the next moment our sensors show empty space. Thexmore felt something cold crawl up his spine. How many fleets? 7 so far, sir. The pattern seems to be accelerating. Across the galaxy, ghost ships like the Silent Thunder were revealing themselves for the first time in 2 centuries. Each one had been waiting in position, studying their targets, learning their weaknesses. Now they struck with devastating precision. Captain Yoon Sora watched as the Valkyrian fleet below her began to panic. They were trying to locate the source of the attacks, but their sensors couldn't detect the human ships at all. Ma'am, should we announce ourselves? Not yet. Let them wonder for a while longer. Dr. Shin Hyejin was still analyzing the alien databases when she made another shocking discovery. The aliens hadn't just been planning to attack human colonies. They had been preparing for this specific attack for over 50 years. Every detail had been planned, from the timing to the targets to the political justification. But as she dug deeper into their files, she found something that made her laugh out loud despite the danger. The aliens had made their plans based on completely wrong information about human military capabilities. They thought human ships were slow because the merchant vessels they saw were designed for cargo, not speed. They thought human weapons were weak because the defensive systems they had observed were deliberately underpowered to avoid seeming threatening. They thought human tactics were predictable because humans had been showing them exactly what they wanted to see. Every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange, every accident that revealed human technology had been carefully orchestrated to create a false impression. The aliens had been studying humanity for decades, but they had been studying a lie. She began broadcasting her findings on all frequencies, knowing that both human and alien forces would receive the transmission. But she aimed her message specifically at the alien commanders. To all forces currently engaged in combat with human colonies, you have been deceived. The humans you think you are fighting do not exist. The technology you think you understand is obsolete by centuries. The tactics you have prepared for are theatrical performances. You are not fighting the human military. You are fighting actors. On New Sol Colony, War Chief Graktal received Dr. Shin's broadcast just as his tactical display showed the true scope of the planet's defenses. Hundreds of weapon installations that hadn't existed moments before, shield generators that could protect entire continents, manufacturing facilities that could produce ammunition faster than his forces could use it. This is impossible, he growled. Intelligence said this world was barely defended. Colonel Zhang's voice came over the communication system, calm and patient. War Chief, would you like to know how we did it? It's actually quite simple. We've been preparing for this attack since the day we first met your species. That was over 300 years ago. Yes, it was. Humans have very long memories, and we're excellent at planning ahead. The holographic display in Zhang's command center showed the positions of every alien force on the planet. They were completely surrounded and outgunned, but they didn't know it yet. Their sensors still showed them winning the battle. You see, War Chief, humans learned something important during our early history. The best way to win a war is to make your enemy think you're weak right up until the moment you destroy them. We call it strategic deception, and we've had a lot of practice. High Commander Thexmore was receiving similar reports from all 12 battlefronts. Human forces that had seemed broken and defeated were suddenly revealing capabilities that shouldn't exist. Worlds that appeared defenseless were turning into impregnable fortresses. Fleets that had looked like easy targets were disappearing alien ships without a trace. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving data from the human broadcasts. If this information is accurate, we may have seriously underestimated their capabilities." "How seriously?" "Sir, according to these files, everything we know about human military technology is at least 200 years out of date. The weapons they've been showing us are obsolete. The ships we've been tracking are decoys. The forces we've been fighting are theatrical performances." Thexmore stared at the data streaming across his screens. If it was true, then the Coalition hadn't been fighting the human military at all. They had been fighting an elaborate show designed to gather intelligence while the real human forces remained completely hidden. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command," he ordered. "I want to speak to whoever is really in charge." The response came back immediately, which meant someone had been waiting for his call. Admiral Choi Sung-woo appeared on the screen, standing in what was obviously a military command center. Behind him, hundreds of officers worked at stations monitoring battles across the galaxy. "High Commander Thexmore, I've been expecting your call. Who are you?" "I'm Admiral Choi Sung-woo, actual commander of human military forces. The people you've been dealing with for the past 3 centuries have been our diplomatic corps. Very talented actors, all of them." Thexmore felt his blood turn to ice. "You're saying the entire human government is fake?" "Not fake, just not the real one. We learned early in our galactic expansion that other species respond better to weakness than strength. So we gave you weakness. While you were studying our merchants and diplomats, we were studying you." The transmission ended, leaving Thexmore staring at a blank screen. Around him, his command staff worked frantically to understand what they were really facing. But it was already too late. The mask had fallen, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans were really capable of when they stopped pretending to be harmless. 6 months after the war began, Major No Tai Min stood in what used to be High Commander Thexmore's personal office on the Velcarian homeworld. The planet's legendary defenses had lasted exactly 4 hours against human assault forces. Not because the humans used overwhelming numbers or superior technology, but because they had been studying those defenses for 200 years and knew exactly how to break them. "The planetary government has agreed to full cooperation," reported his aide, Lieutenant Park Soo-jin. "They're ready to begin reparations immediately." Major No looked out the window at the capital city below. Velcarian citizens went about their daily lives much as they always had, but now under human supervision. The occupation had been remarkably peaceful, mainly because resistance was pointless. What about their military leadership? Most of them are requesting meetings. They want to understand what happened. High Commander Thexmore sat in a detention cell that was more comfortable than many alien homes. The humans had been surprisingly polite captors, providing him with books, entertainment, and even access to tactical databases so he could study their victory. Captain Yoon So-ra, now serving as military governor of the sector, entered his cell carrying a tea set. She poured 2 cups and sat across from him as if they were old friends. "You wanted to know how we did it," she said calmly. "Your weapons are impossible. Your ships appeared from nowhere. Your tactics were perfect. Our weapons follow the same laws of physics as everyone else's. We just understand those laws better. Our ships were always there, you simply couldn't detect them. Our tactics were perfect because we've been practicing them against you for centuries." She activated a holographic display that showed the battle for his homeworld from the human perspective. Every move his forces had made was predicted and countered before it happened. "You see, Commander, humans learned something important very early in our development. The best way to win a war is to know your enemy better than they know themselves. While you were studying the humans, you could see we were studying every aspect of your civilization. For how long? Since the day we first made contact with your species. 312 years of careful observation and preparation. The Crystalline Dominion had tried a different approach. Rather than fight, they had immediately offered to negotiate through their finest diplomats. Ambassador Lee Jae-hoon listened to their proposals with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world. The crystalline representatives offered technology transfers, trade agreements, and even tribute. Their final offer included giving humans complete access to their most advanced scientific research. Ambassador Lee reviewed their proposals carefully, then presented them with a single document. What is this? A bill. 50 years of espionage and surveillance doesn't come free. You owe humanity for 3 centuries of intelligence gathering, infiltration, and planning aggressive war. The amount was beyond staggering. It represented more wealth than the crystalline dominion had generated in its entire existence. This is impossible. We could never pay such an amount. Then I suppose you'll be working for us for the foreseeable future. Dr. An Soo-jin published her research paper 6 months after the war ended. Why they never understood us. A study in galactic psychology became required reading in schools across human space and was translated into every known alien language. The paper detailed the fundamental misunderstanding that had led to the war. Every alien species in the galaxy had made the same mistake. They assumed that a preference for peace meant an inability to fight effectively. Humans avoid unnecessary violence, she wrote, because they understand its true cost better than any other known species. This is not weakness, it is wisdom born from experience. A species that has fought wars for 10,000 years develops very different attitudes toward conflict than species that have known only peace. The research showed that every alien species had projected their own values onto humanity. Species that had never fought major wars assumed humans were like them. Species that solved conflicts through negotiation believed humans shared their approach. Species that valued individual survival above military objectives thought humans would surrender rather than accept casualties. They were wrong about everything. President Kim Eun-young addressed the human population from her office in New Geneva, the capital that most aliens had never known existed. Behind her, the skyline showed a city that had been built specifically to house the real human government. For 3 centuries, we have maintained the fiction that humanity was just another peaceful species trying to find its place in the galaxy. Today that fiction ends. We are not like the other species. We never were, and we never will be. The speech was broadcast on every human world and transmitted to every alien government. Its message was simple. The age of pretending was over. We chose to appear weak because we believed that strength without wisdom leads to unnecessary conflict. We chose to hide our capabilities because we hoped that other species would prove worthy of trust. We were wrong. Fleet Admiral Park Chang-min oversaw the establishment of new galactic territories from his flagship, a mobile command center the size of a small moon. The former Valkyrian Empire was now divided into human administrative zones, each one governed by officers who had spent their careers studying alien psychology. The transformation was remarkably efficient. Within 6 months, former enemy worlds were producing resources for human colonies and providing technological research for human scientists. The process was not cruel, but it was absolute. Sir, we're receiving reports from all sectors. Compliance is at 100%. Any resistance movements? None that pose any significant threat. Most alien populations seem to have accepted the new reality. Admiral Park nodded. It wasn't surprising. Humans had spent centuries learning how to govern other species effectively. They understood alien psychology better than most aliens understood themselves. Captain Lee Woo-jin, now revealed as Director of Human Intelligence, stood before the reformed Galactic Council in what used to be the Nexus Prime Station. The facility had been renamed Terra Station, and its governing charter had been completely rewritten. The new council had very different rules. Humans held veto power over any decision affecting galactic security. All military activities required human approval, and every species that had participated in the coalition was required to provide reparations for the next millennium. The old galactic order was based on the assumption that all species were roughly equal in capability and wisdom. This assumption was incorrect. The new order is based on demonstrated competence and proven reliability. Counselor Song Mi-ran, humanity's official representative to the new council, explained the restructured system to the assembled delegates. Many of them were the same aliens who had voted for war 6 months earlier. Their attitudes had changed considerably. Under the new system, species advance in status based on their contributions to galactic stability and their adherence to civilized behavior. Acts of aggression result in immediate loss of status and privileges. The Hive Collective's former queens had been reassigned to serve as administrative assistants in human colonial offices. Their vast collective intelligence made them excellent at managing complex bureaucratic systems, and their natural tendency to follow orders made them ideal employees. Supervisor. Oh Hyun-ju found their constant apologies somewhat tiresome, but their efficiency was remarkable. What used to take human administrators weeks to complete, the former hive queens could finish in days. Your species adapts well to administrative work, she told them during one of their daily briefings. We live to serve the collective good, they replied in perfect unison. Serving human administrators serves the new Galactic Collective. Dr. Shin Hye-jin established the new Xenological Research Institute on what used to be the crystalline homeworld. Her first major project was a comprehensive study of how different species had misunderstood human nature. The results were both fascinating and disturbing. Every major alien civilization had developed detailed theories about human psychology, and every single theory had been completely wrong. They studied us for centuries, she reported to the human government, but they only studied the parts of us we wanted them to see. When they encountered evidence that contradicted their theories, they dismissed it as anomalous rather than reconsidering their assumptions. The research showed that the aliens had been victims of their own prejudices. They had believed humans were weak because they wanted to believe it. They had ignored evidence of human capability because acknowledging it would have required them to change their entire worldview. Admiral Choi Sung-woo stood on the observation deck of Terra Station, looking out at the construction crews building monuments to the new galactic order. The largest monument bore a simple inscription in every galactic language. They were warned. The inscription was historically accurate. For 3,000 years, the oldest law in galactic civilization had warned everyone about the dangers of provoking humanity. The law had been created by the few species that had survived their first encounters with humans, and it had been passed down through generations as essential wisdom. The aliens had chosen to ignore that wisdom, and now they were paying the price.